Hi everyone, my name is Samreen Anjum and in this talk I will be discussing our VizWiz-VQA challenge. Here's the agenda for the talk. I will first introduce the dataset and define the task for the challenge. I will then describe the challenge and how the results were evaluated, followed by the announcement of the winners. Finally, I'll provide some analysis of the results and the patterns that we observed. So let's first start with the task and the dataset for this challenge. We often come across questions such as, is this shirt dirty or clean? And what flavor is this? Which may seem trivial to answer for many of you, but for the people who are blind, such questions can significantly impede them in their daily tasks. To be able to work on addressing this task, an important component is to have a dataset representative of these challenges. Which leads us to the dataset used in this challenge. Nearly 10 years ago, a mobile phone application called VizWiz was released to help blind people answer such visual questions. With this application, a user could double-click on the phone to take an image, then double-click on the phone again to record a question about the image, and then have both sent to a team of crowd workers, who in turn would provide an answer to the person. Over 11,000 people used this application to ask over 70,000 visual questions between 2011 and 2015. And with that, our VizWiz dataset is the first visual question answering dataset arising from a natural setting where real users were asking questions about images to support their daily needs. There were 3 key steps taken to create this dataset. First, to preserve anonymity, we transcribed each audio recorded question to remove voice and resaved each voice to remove metadata such as location where the picture was taken. We next removed all visual questions that contain personal information such as financial statements, prescription pills, addresses, and faces. Finally, we crowdsourced 10 answers per visual question to support algorithm evaluation. In total, the final dataset includes over 30,000 visual questions and over 300,000 answers. Going back to the examples we saw earlier, here are the answers that we received from the crowd workers. The shirt was marked clean, the flavor was sweet pepper, and the remaining 2 questions were marked unanswerable. This brings us to the challenge description. And this year we hosted our VizWiz-VQA challenge on Eval AI. And here's how the dataset was split. The training set contained over 20,500 visual questions, validation about 4,300 visual questions, and finally the test contained of 8,000 visual questions. The evaluation metric is the same as the accuracy measure used in the VQA challenge. To compute a score, a predicted answer to each question is matched with the number of humans that responded with the same answer. If at least 3 humans responded with the same answer, it achieves a full score. Otherwise, a partial score is given based on the number of matched answers. And we'll now announce the winners for the challenge this year. And at the second place, we have the Sudoku team from the Xiandian University, achieving an overall accuracy of 56.2%. The winners for the challenge this year are HSS Lab team from Innsbruck with an accuracy of 56.33%. We'd like to congratulate both these teams. And we now look into some analysis of the results. Here's the distribution of scores obtained by the top 5 teams, and overall, you'll notice all teams beat the baseline score that was obtained on the VizWiz dataset. We wanted to look deeper and understand the distribution of answers that the teams were able to answer perfectly. That is, the predicted answer matched at least 3 answers from the ground truth. Here we noticed that about 30% of the questions were predicted correctly by all of the teams, and we labeled them as the easy questions. And on the other hand, we noticed none of the teams were able to answer 45% of the questions correctly, and we identified them as difficult questions. We noticed about 55% of the questions can be answered perfectly by at least 1 submission. When we look at partial scores, where the team's answers matched at least 1 of the answers in the ground truth, we notice the numbers changing. And in this case, about 22% of the questions were marked incorrectly or were not marked by any of the teams, while 50% of the answers were marked correctly by all of the teams. Overall, we can see about 78% of the questions can be answered correctly by at least 1 team's submission. To provide a better understanding, he wanted to provide some examples. In this first example, we have a question asking what is in this image. to which the correct answer in the ground truth is Coors Light, but the answer given by the top performer HSS Lab is soda. In the second example, we have a question asking for the brand of vacuum, and the expected answer is Hoover, but the predicted answer by the team is unanswerable. In the third example again, the question was marked incorrectly as unanswerable, and the pattern repeats with the rest of the questions. In the case of easy questions, they were mostly related to objects, or the answers were actually unanswerable. In the first example, the image is blurred and therefore unanswerable. In the second question, the question is correctly marked as laptop. Third again is a blurred image, so unsuitable. The fourth one is marked correctly with stove, and the other two are marked incorrectly as well for it being unanswerable because the content of the image is not clear. We then analyze the results based on the type of the answer requested, and the categories were yes, no, number, other, and unanswerable. And here we see HSS Lab was the highest performer on the yes, no category of questions, unanswerable and unanswerable, while the second and third teams performed better on other and number categories respectively. We were also curious to see how the performance varied based on the skills required to answer a question. And to support this analysis, we defined 4 categories of skills: text, color, counting, and object. And to classify the visual questions, we asked crowd workers to label the skills required to answer the visual question. Based on these 4 categories, we observed teams performed the best in questions related to color and the worst in questions related to text. In the case of questions related to color, HSS Lab was the topper, and for the rest, Sudoku outperformed the rest of the teams. Here are some examples again to give you a better sense. We have easy text questions asking for what kind of cereal is in the image, for which the answer is correctly marked as Cheerios. But in the case of a difficult example where the temperature is asked, the answer is incorrectly marked as no. In the second case, where the color of shoes is asked, the answer is correctly marked as black. But in the second example, it's marked incorrectly as blue. In the third case, we have an easy question related to count, which is marked correctly as 3, whereas the other one is marked unanswerable. Another interesting challenge that comes from working with real images is that the quality of images is often compromised. We noticed that about 50% of the images have quality issues in them, and the issues range from images being blurred, too bright, too dark, out of frame, etc. When we compare the results, we notice teams perform better on images with quality issues than on images with no quality issues. And here we see Sudoku perform better than HSS Lab in the images with no quality issues. Here's some interesting examples again. With the images that have quality issues, one is marked unanswerable correctly, while the other is incorrectly given a generic label of soda. With those that do not have any quality issues, an easy example is correctly marked as black, where the beans were asked, but was unable to provide further details of the book. And that brings us to the end of our discussion. And with that, we would like to thank you for your time and the teams that participated in this challenge. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you.